What's up, duck hunters? We're going to do another Q&A here. We had a fellow duck hunter ask a question about a vacation rental client. So we're going to answer these questions and then hopefully you guys can learn from this Q&A. So just a little bit of a warning for you guys. We are going to be dropping a lot of golden nuggets. So I brought you guys some protection here, for liability purposes. So make sure to put your construction hat on and let's start dropping some golden nuggets. All right, duck hunters. So if you guys don't know, a vacation rental client is like basically one of the most ultimate apartment locating clients in the industry because they always want a blanket lease. You can lease like 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 units at once. And I've done that several times year after year after year. It's something I go over in depth in the master class. It isn't just a normal corporate client, which those are very valuable too with apartment locating. It's a corporate client that specializes in like paying the market rent for like the normal year lease, and then they sublet it on like Airbnb and HomeAway, right, for short-term rentals, which maximizes profit. So that's kind of what the client is about. If you didn't know, in case you didn't know what I was talking about. But let's go ahead and begin the video. All right, Zach, so you were asking, so I have a client that wants to meet tomorrow to add me to this team for vacation rentals. Yo, congratulations, Zach. That's a really big deal, man. And you got a vacation rental client very quick. So, very impressive, man. It looks like you're killing it. Zach, I forget what market you're in. If you can drop a comment below and tell me what city, what state you're in, that would be really cool. And so it's always interesting to know where these vacation rentals are getting represented in what market. So let's see here. He has one of his options for the complex. Okay, so I see what you're saying here. Master lease or the managed units. The second option of managing units, how does that work? Yeah, that's a really good question, Zach. So for the master lease, it sort of depends what they want to do, right? Every vacation rental client always wants to sort of come into a multifamily building and then master lease it, obviously, because that's just what the goal is, right? It's to pay and guarantee the market rent. Almost every vacation rental client guarantees whatever the normal market rent is, but then they want to just short-term rent it, right? Because they know the profit from renting it short-term, for a few nights at a time on Airbnb or HomeAway, etc. That profit always covers the market rent and it's always profitable, right? So that's why vacation rental clients want to work with these buildings, because they don't actually have to put up, the investment to fund the construction and to, operate the building. They just come in and sort of master lease, a section of their units via, signed by usually a blanket lease, which is like usually one corporate rental application for several units at once instead of separate applications and separate fees for each unit, which is what normal residents do, right? Like when me or you would lease an apartment. So as far as the master lease, man, I've had vacation rental clients ask me to try to master lease an entire property. And obviously that's not going to work, if they've never done business with them before. It's happened in some markets, like in Florida, I've seen it happen before with smaller multifamily buildings. They first start doing business with a vacation rental client, for like 10 units, maybe it turns into like a whole floor is the vacation rental unit. And then over time, they just master lease the whole entire building, because they've proven the concept that it's much more profitable, and then the owner of the multifamily building agrees, and then it's just like they're in a partnership, right? But this never really happens just right off the bat. It seems like your client, Zach, is probably just wanting to blanket lease a bunch of units where they guarantee the market rent and then just, sublet it basically. That's what he means by the master lease. When you present this opportunity to the building, Zach, always ask for the blanket lease style where they're paying like one corporate application and one, like deposit instead of several, because usually the answer, you can get a yes a lot of the times, right? You'll be surprised. So that'll save your client some money up front instead of leasing like each individual unit. The second question you had was the managing, right? You were kind of confused on what they meant by like managing the units. So this is kind of like another business model, right? This business model means that your vacation rental client is trying to come up with a deal where the multifamily building allows them to take, a few units and just immediately start doing vacation rentals without guaranteeing the rent, without paying the rent. But in return, they're going to split the profits, right? They're going to take a commission of the profits for the vacation rental business. So if you think about it, a lot of these standard apartment complexes, like all of them do the same thing, right? It's always like a year lease to a resident. Even though you would think that these apartment complexes understand the short-term rental business model, they really don't, in my experience, right? Even today in 2020, because the whole short-term rental business in general is still fairly new. And so if they have an operator come in and then, they let them short-term rent their units as the professional that understands the business model, then it's just more profitable, and then they take a commission of the profit, right? So your client, a lot of vacation rental clients, they're always open to this model, because when they're not paying the market rent and they're not actually paying any rent, there's like no risk, right? So it's like, they're already used to setting up systems where they can manage hundreds and hundreds of units as a vacation rental client, because they have to if they want to be able to scale. The idea is, why wouldn't they just manage other buildings' units if they're not paying any rent and they're not taking on any risk, because they already know how to do it in the best way, right? So this creates value for the multifamily building that, is so used to traditional 1-year residential leases, but they're interested in profiting a lot more with the short-term rental platform, but they don't really want to manage it because they don't know how to. When I've blanket leased several vacation rental clients, I've had property managers of the entire building that we were doing a deal with actually tell us that, hey, listen, we tried to do the whole Airbnb thing with like 7 of our units and it just wasn't profitable. I've had someone actually tell me that, and then we closed the deal with a client that basically did the same thing in the same property, right? So you really do have to be an expert with the short-term rental market in order to really do it profitably, right? So sometimes you can close agreements like that with your clients, but in my experience, Zach, it just doesn't happen as often, right? Like usually the second option, like the managing the units for them and them operating it without actually paying the rent and then just splitting profits, that usually happens after you close on like a blanket lease, right? Because like you'll notice if you're representing a vacation rental client, Zach, and you're referring them to the property and this is the first time they're doing business, you'll notice that you'll probably only close on a blanket lease because it's like the building has less risk that way, right? It's like, if all else fails, they're still guaranteeing and paying the market rent, which is all that matters to them immediately. So what will end up happening, I can guarantee for you, Zach, is that you'll probably do a blanket lease, make a ton of money, and then that's how they're gonna want to start. And then in the future, after a few months of things going, working out well, then you as the broker can communicate, with the building and say, hey, listen, I think things are going well, ask them if things are going well, and then say, hey, my client's looking to actually manage a few of your units. If you guys want to, receive more profit just for a commission split or a commission paid to the client just for managing the units, right? So then it's easier to sell once they're already comfortable with the client for a few months, and the blanket lease model works better, right, is working well. So usually your option 2 comes like later, not right away, but it's possible. Anything's possible in real estate. The other thing, man, is you sent me this image here that your client must have sent you, and I went ahead and I hid your client's name so that way no one contacts them. So I remember to do that. But the one thing is, it looks like this is like the flyer that your client uses to send out to buildings. I would tell your client, man, to get rid of the leasing commissions. You see where it says, leasing at standard rates, you accelerate lease up while eliminating vacancies, credit losses, leasing commissions. Like, tell them to get rid of the leasing commissions, because that's it contradicts your ability to receive higher commissions. So I would tell your client, like, hey, can I modify this? Because I wouldn't be sending this over to properties in the email and saying like, oh, you're not going to have to pay commissions when they're going to have to pay you commissions. You know, so sometimes your short-term rental client, they just need to hear how you do business. The other thing is when you say like you're going to join their team, I would be very cautious of representing a vacation rental client if there's several other real estate agents representing them, because that's a crazy conflict of interest, right? Because if you've got a good database like the one I recommend, you're going to contact all of the same properties that these other locators are going to contact too. So, you know, the annoying thing is you don't want to set up a meeting or call buildings on behalf of your vacation rental client if other locators are doing the same thing, because then it's like when you finally have a deal worked out based off of your efforts, it's like kind of a conflict of interest, right? What if they paid the other company first? You don't want to have all these brokerage firms calling on behalf of one vacation rental client trying to collect payment, because then it makes all brokerages look kind of silly if they're all representing the same client, and you don't want to upset other brokerages. It's like just go for the exclusive representation. So whenever I help vacation rental clients, I straight up tell them in my video pitch or over the phone with the executive, I'm like, listen, I'm really, really good at what I do. I've done this before. I've blanket leased before, and I'd be happy to, you know, set up the connections and set up the introductions for you, but I've got to be your exclusive real estate agent if you're interested in working with me, because I'm not interested in working alongside other competitors that, you know, we're all going to call the same properties and have the same conversations. That's just not how we do business. And so that, you know, that's what it's going to take if you'd like to work together. And if they say no, I mean, just work with another client, man, because you don't want to do all this work and, you know, have conversations with buildings and then lose out on like 20 or 30 grand off of a blanket lease because there's been several locators that called on their behalf. That's weird, man. That's like stress that you don't want to deal with. So I would just have the conversation up front and say, hey, listen, I'm better than all these locators. I know what I'm doing. Like, you guys can interview me if you want. Because chances are if you went through my course, like, you already know all the questions they're going to ask. So tell them, like, listen, you guys can interview me if you want. I'll answer all questions. I'm really good at what I do, but like, we've got to be exclusive. So I hope that makes sense, man. Always be confident and believe in yourself. And again, congratulations on your vacation rental client, and I'll see you guys on the next. Whoa.